speaker. Pat and his family live in Hartford, New York, where they've bred and owned many high-achieving cattle. Pat himself is an accomplished fitter with 8 years of professional experience working all over North America. He's also judged at many reputable shows, such as being the associate judge at the Red and White Holstein show at the World Dairy Expo. So thank you for having us, Pat, and we'll love to hear you speak.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's an honor for me to be here to talk to you guys today. Thank you very much to Brianne and Jennifer for setting this whole thing up. It's a great idea to bring people together in times like these. It's kind of craziness out there right now, but it's nice to see that that everyone's still trying to move forward and learn and get better. Not sure how the format really goes with this. You guys just kind of spit out questions, or do you want me to get right into some of the questions you asked on the Gmail? Or
if you want to just get started, Pat, kind of with how, like, basically what the kids should be doing, because June 1st they have to pick their calves. They have to send in to 4-H Ontario what their project calf is going to be. So a lot of the kids are already starting to work with their calf, and Rick and Callum talked about the best ways to halter break and things like that. So if you wouldn't mind starting with maybe the best ways to start washing their calves, and how to start prepping the hair for clipping, and some of the things they should be doing at home. We've got a lot of beginner clippers here too, kids that haven't done a lot that want to start. And we've got some, you can probably tell by some of the answers, that have been to the young breeder school in Europe. And so we have some who have done some clipping at some of the higher levels. So you've got a whole gamut here tonight. So we're just keen to listen to what you have to say. And as you're talking, the kids will start typing answers in, and Jenny or I will kind of interject with some of the questions. And some of the kids are brave enough that they'll unmute themselves and they'll ask the questions as you're going along, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. That's perfect. So not near as accomplished or intelligent as Callum or Rick, but like I said, it's an honor for me to be here, and hopefully I can share a little wisdom with you. So I think we all know that showing, fitting, all that kind of stuff starts way before the show does. You know, like you said, June 1st is your date for the 4-H club. So if you haven't started already, you should be thinking about it pretty quick. Like you guys talked about halter breaking and stuff, getting your cattle tame. That's a huge part of fitting, especially at the youth level. You like calves, myself included, like calves that are calm and easy to work with to clip. But I would say, for sure, on the clipping end of it and the washing end of it, it's never too early to start. I know a lot of guys that do this full time with show heifers, and the few heifers we have ourselves, we try to wash kind of all spring, thinking for summer shows. You're washing, clipping. I would say if you have your 4-H calf picked out already, you should be buzzing her off. And it doesn't have to be perfect, especially at home this time right now. It's one of those things that's great for practice. I wouldn't worry too much about messing up the top line too much at this point, but it's great for the youth to practice. But when it comes to washing, clipping clean cattle is way, way easier than clipping dirty cattle, for sure. One of the questions on my Gmail here was, what's your favorite soaps to use? I would say at the shows, I think there's nothing better than Orvis. And if you want to put some bluing or purple soap for the whitening and stuff in there too, that's fine. Or even some shampoo mixed in with some conditioner and stuff like that, however you'd like to do it. But at home, I wouldn't use Orvis every day. I think it dries them out a little too much. But and everyone maybe has their favorite kind of brand they like to use at home. Here we use cheap Suave shampoo for washing at home. It's $1 a bottle, and it does a nice job. But so I guess when you get working with your cows, heifers, I guess, calves, and getting them washed, getting them clean, they're trained, getting them buzzed off the first time, clipped off the first time, getting their long hair off of them is huge to promote hair growth. Like I said, the first time around, I would clip, I don't know how familiar you are with blade sizes and stuff like that, but just if it's more cold wintertime, I'd use a plucker blade, a real thick blade. Getting more like this time of year, I think a 31 is just fine, or a thick 84, just like a brand new kind of blade. It'll leave the hair extra long, promotes hair growth a little better than clipping them off very tight, maybe even tighter than you would at the show. And jerseys included, which are ones you would clip tight at a show. So when it comes to blowing the tops and stuff right now, I think now is the perfect time, especially for our young fitters, to be working on that. Maybe show day, you have an older member of your 4-H group doing the top line for you. But I think at home, it's very important to try on your own. So I would say don't worry too much about messing it up at this time of the game. I think just go out and give it a shot. And if you have an older 4-H member or an older sibling or parent who could help you out with that, I think that's great to give it a shot right now. Next on the list, where do you want me to go from here, Brianna?
No, that's good. Does anybody have any questions right now? I know some of the older members had some questions. I guess something that's coming to my mind are my kids here, Pat, when you're washing, you're talking about washing now and getting them buzzed off. How often, like when we're early on in the season, how often should the kids be washing right now? Does the amount of washing that they do, at the start of the year, should it become more frequent as their season progresses, or like, is it once a week kind of thing? Is it like, how often should they be doing that?
Well, I would say for sure it should become more frequent the closer you get to the show. Right now, if you're not talking shows, if everything goes as planned till July, August, if you're washing them once or twice a week, I think that's probably okay. If you want to do it more, I think it's good to make sure you're not drying out their skin. So as long as you can keep a check on that, like the Orvis will dry them out, but other soaps might too. But I think once or twice a week right now. And if you're real ambitious and you wanted to take them out and rinse them every other night, every time you do that, I would, even when you wash or you rinse, always brush the top line back down. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but brushing back with the hair laying flat, and the belly hair too, the same thing, brush it back down. It helps promote the hair to grow straight, so it's much easier to blow up. It doesn't blow up in a circle, especially Jersey Heifers can get like that sometimes. It looks like you're trying to blow up a tornado up their top line. So it's pretty important to, every time you wash or rinse, to be brushing them down. So we're talking about different things like that for promoting hair growth, I guess, and training hair. So that's where it comes back to clipping, but also blowing up. If you have your 1,4-H calf and want to put in the extra time, even if you don't clip her all over every week, if you want to just blow her hair up every week, blow up her top line, get that hair trained so it stands up nice and it almost pops up on its own. You can tell the heifers when you're clipping that have been worked with a lot compared to the heifers that haven't maybe had near as much washing or clipping, stuff like that. But
what's your feeling on a lot of kids use Revive and things like that, but I'm not sure that a lot of them know how to use it properly. What's your take on the use of Revive? Do you use it? Should it be used? Does it get overused? Does it get underused?
I don't know. And this is where it's going to come back to, everyone does things a little bit different. I'm going to say this to start off with. Everyone does things a little different, and whatever works for you, keep going with it. If that's what works for you, if you do a little bit different, then I'm sure I do things different than Rick Allen and Callum McKibben, and Callum does things different than me and Rick. It's just everyone does things a little bit different. There's no one straight way of how to do things. And if it works, if that's what you're comfortable with, do it. Myself, I don't use Revive like some people do. Some people, it seems like whenever they come back from getting rinsed or washed, they just load them right up with Revive. I don't know if that completely helps. I think if you're using a soap, especially at home, that's a non-abrasive, not drying them out, not burning them, then it's not really necessary. But if you feel like you want to do that, then I don't think it damages anything either. So like I said, it's all on how you want to do things, and everyone's got different quirks. Everyone's got different ways to do it. I clip different than some people, and as long as you get the same job done at the end of the day, that's all that's really important.
Awesome. I mean, if any of the kids have questions, pop in. But what I'll do is if I can go down the list of the ones that were sent in, and I've got a few more here that I'll ask. So if anybody wants to pop in and ask questions, I'm not trying to take over. But what do you use? Callum talked about preventing sunburn, and so for a lot of us, and us here included, we're like Callum, and we don't have a lot of indoor space to keep the heifers and our heifers, you know, after they go to a show and then they have no hair in the middle of the summer. What do you use to prevent sunburn, or do you have any tips for that?
Like you said, preferably be keep them indoors for a few days after they get clipped. But if that's not a possibility, that's okay too. I would say the biggest thing would be, especially white heifers. They're the worst ones that get sunburn, and I'm sure you've all seen them. They get red and they get scaly and they get really, it hurts when you touch them. Pour the baby powder right on them. I think, as far as I know, that's the best thing to keep them from getting sunburned. It looks a little funny. You see them out there running around, and if you want to wash them, that's fine, and pour it back on again. Make sure you let a little bit of hair regrowth happen before you start kicking them out without any, because you get a sunburnt heifer, and especially how I know a little bit about how your 4-H show season runs, and there's a lot of shows kind of seen back to back to back, or every other week for the month, and it can really be detrimental for your calf when they get super sunburnt. They don't look near as nice. They're fidgety. They're hard to do anything with. So pretty important. I would just dump baby powder, all over their tops and sides. Kind of their white spots are the worst.
Anybody else have any questions before I pop in with some more? Oh, here we go. We've got one from Stella. If the hair gets dried out and the skin is flaky from soap, how do you get, sorry, I don't have the whole question coming out. Here we go. How do you get the oils back in the skin, or do you just leave it?
Well, it depends how quickly you have a show, and it's hard to get them back right away. But I think for me, one of the best things to do is just baby oil. I like to put baby oil in a spray bottle and just load up their sides. And that comes back to the same thing. Usually when you see it, on black heifers and stuff, and they look scaly and all that, like just load them up with baby oil. I think it helps. And maybe it doesn't work at all, but it makes me feel better, I guess. It helps rejuvenate, moisturize the skin a little bit. And I feel like it works a little bit better. But if there's no show in a couple weeks, it wouldn't bother me too much, I guess, to see them like that.
All right. Unless there's any more questions about washing, and we might have some more. Oh, here we go. We've got another one. Do you prefer, okay, so this is actually perfect because this was the route I was going to take. We were going to start getting into some questions about some specific clipping techniques. So here's one from Courtney. Do you prefer clipping the tail head square or round, or does it depend on the animal?
I think for sure how much hair you leave on the tail head depends on the animal. I like to do maybe a little bit in between square and round, I guess. I don't completely round it off, but I don't leave it to a square point. I think the square point maybe is a little bit closer how you're going to be, how you want it to be, but I think it just looks a little, for me personally, think it looks a little corny to have a super square, tail head. So I like to round it off a little bit. But I would say when it comes to doing top lines through the tail head, that more is less. I think the worst thing you can do is leave a whole bunch of hair on their tail head, and then every time you watch them get in the ring and they pop their tail in the air, and it makes them look like soggy high tail head heifers. So I would say that more is less when it comes to that. If you have any doubt at all that you think, and it could look incredible, when you're standing there clipping her, even when you're walking her back to the stall. But I would say if you have any doubt at all, take it down. It's not going to make a difference between first and second, 5th and 20th. It's not going to make a difference at all. Take it down.
Awesome. All right. We've got another question that came in, but I have another from Clarissa, but she asked another one ahead of time too. And I think it fits in with what you just talked about. And this is a big issue up here. I know there's a lot of people that like it. There's a lot of people that don't like it. And so the 4-H kids are keen to know what some of the older, more experienced fitters think on this practice, and it's carving the ribs. And so what is your take on ribs? I know there's a lot of peer pressure out there to do it. And so I personally know I've seen you do it, and I think you're good at it. So how the kids want to know, what's the best way to practice doing that at home? How do you do it? What equipment do you use to do it? And what's your advice?
I think this is one of the trickiest questions and it seems to be a very common theme for the past couple of years. Whenever I've done a fitting clinic for 4-Hers and stuff like this, that's a 9-year-old kids, that's the only thing they want to ask. And I say we should start, especially if you're young, start on just getting the hair off them. Like that's where you need to start. Don't jump right into the ribs. I think for me, especially with youth shows and kids learning to clip, learn to clip the heads, learn to clip the legs. Like that's much more important than the ribs at that point. Now, when you're a little more advanced and you can work at it, this is another one of those things that everyone maybe has a little bit different techniques on how they do. I personally like it when it's done right. I think it looks really nice across the ring. I understand why maybe the generation older than me doesn't like it because sometimes it doesn't look natural, and I can understand that. Some people maybe go a little too aggressive, and that's just my opinion. So I'm not going to even get into that. But me personally, I took a 50 blade, and so when we first started doing it, it was before anyone started like manipulating blades to try and do it. So I always used the Arcos and just kind of the corner and went up the rib. And then I had to even go more aggressive than that. So I started using a 50 blade and would just use the corner of the blade and go down. Now I took a blade and put it in a vise and ground off. I think I left like 10 teeth I just left on the outside edge because that's kind of how I'm comfortable holding it. Some people like to leave it in the middle. Some people leave it on the opposite edge. I did. There's all sorts of different ways that people make the blade. But that all comes back to however you're comfortable doing it. Whatever you're comfortable having the blade. Because I know if I try to use someone else's blade that's in the middle, it screws me all up. I have a heck of a time trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be hitting. I got ribs in between the ribs, and it's just a mess. And the same way when you're holding the clipper. So I don't really have, I can use my phone here. So I'm using the clippers kind of, so if I was going up clipping the udder, using the udder clippers with 50s, I like to just back drag down the rib. And there's a lot of different guys that do all sorts of different ways of holding it too. And this is where I feel like I'm going to say it a lot tonight when it comes to clipping, when it comes to doing top lines. Hold the clippers however you like, as long as it's comfortable for you and you can get it so it looks good or you're happy with it. You know, you don't have to hold exactly the same way to get to the same end result. But that's how I personally do it. Whether you like them or not, I think they can look really, really nice across the ring. But I also think they can look really bad sometimes too, and even take away from the heifer. Some heifers, cows, however you want to, talk about heifers or older cows, their rib structures are all different, and some just really pop and look great, and other ones, it doesn't show it off as well.
Is there a difference in how you approach ribs and tail heads and different techniques based on breed? You had mentioned there quickly earlier on, and for some of the older ones, they would know what you mean. Could you expand on, like, when you had said you clip a Jersey tighter than you would a Holstein? Can you expand a little bit on that? Just some of the differences in between when you're clipping different breeds?
Yep. So every breed's a little different, and we should come back to even a step before that. I guess I didn't explain myself very well, and I'd like to say that everyone's answers before the roll call were all great answers. Whether you're just starting to learn or you're more advanced, they were great answers all the way across the board. But I heard numerous times on you have to clip every heifer different. Stand back and look at your heifer, see what faults you have to fix, and someone else said. When you get done, make sure you step back and look and see how it looks, because those are very, very important things. So every heifer gets clipped maybe a little different, and even more so across breeds. So in kind of just a cookie cutter way of explaining the different breeds is I would say Holstein heifers, I always clip a little bit thicker, and some guys like to clip them tight, and they do well too. So I'm not going to say that's any different. I like to clip them a little thicker. I think they look a little more natural. I don't think they look so pink and gray, and maybe gives them a little more mass, a little more spring all the way through. So I clip their bodies thicker. I should step back even farther. Clip their bodies thicker and clip their legs with a tighter blade, which we would call a cow blade. I don't know if you're how familiar you are with that, but I'll say, like, I have a heifer blade and a cow blade. A heifer blade would be more like a thicker 84 AU or a 31, and the cow blade would be a ground down 84 AU. So that's how I clip the Holstein heifers. Then Holstein cows, I would clip all over with the cow blade, because you want to make them look dairy all the way through. And that's why you clip the heifer's legs a little tighter, just to try to show off the the cleanliness up through their hock, up through their flank, or not their flank, up through their thigh, show off the femininity, their head and neck, you like to clip a little tighter. And the cows, I like to clip tighter, the same thing. You like to show off clean cut, you know, and the jerseys are the same way. The jerseys, they don't change colors quite like Holstein cows do. If anything, they usually get a little bit darker. So some guys go really, really, really tight. I usually have too many to clip in the week, so I don't go as tight as they do. But I like to clip jerseys tighter. It shows off how dairy and clean cut they are. And usually the tighter you go, they become kind of a nicer color. For me, I like the darker jerseys. They show off a little more. So those are the difference between kind of for blades. And I would say pretty much all the colored breeds, I clip a little bit tighter than Holstein Heifers.
Awesome. All right, we've got some questions here now specific to equipment. So Clarissa asked, what equipment should everyone have in their box? And so I think I kind of sent you something similar to that with a budget in mind, because we do have some members that don't live on a farm and they borrow their calves, and so but they do want to do their own clipping and learn. So with a budget in mind, what are the essentials that every 4-H'er who wants to fit their own calf should have in their arsenal, in their bag?
So I would say, and you go to shows and you see these guys that do it for a living and their bag's got 17 sets of clippers in there, and you know, and all this stuff, and they don't tell you it's only because 3 of them out of the 17 actually work, and the other ones they just throw back in the bag. But so I would say for the essentials is 1 set of clippers, and I get asked a lot, what's the best kind of clippers? And for me, for everyday clipping, especially if you live on a farm and you're going to be clipping off the cows in the herd and stuff like that, there's nothing better than Oscott clippers when it comes for just total everyday clipping. There's so much less maintenance. They're more expensive, like twice as much money as Andy's clippers, but they're just really, really good clippers, and just seem to be trouble free. But a set of clippers, either Andy's, I personally at shows, I like Andy's clippers for tight blades. I feel like it's a lot easier to do the legs and to get in between the ribs and all that kind of stuff with Andy's versus Osclops. But I don't think, especially if you're just starting out, you don't need 2 sets of clippers. So if you're just going to be clipping your 4-H calf, I would say a set of Andy's clippers, a set of thicker blades, whether it be 31s, and a set of tight blades. I think they're pretty readily available from a few guys you would probably know or see on Facebook could find a set of blades like that. And then a top line blower. Myself, I have always used a Rusk Speed Freak, it's called. For me, I think it's the best blower there is. In the US, they're like $70 on Amazon or something. And they don't last forever, but they blow really hot and really hard. And it just makes the job of blowing the top line very, very easy, a lot easier. It snaps the hair right up to where you want it. So a brush and a blower, and then a set of udder clippers for the tail. Whether you really need that just for at home isn't maybe as important, but for the show, you're going to want to use 50s and skin the tail off. But I would say, and I know other guys would probably tell you a set of little Arco walls or Crematos or something like that. It's pretty important too. But for me, when I consider just bare essentials, that isn't necessary. I really think personally that most people starting out clipping should not even be allowed to touch a set of Arcos, because you learn how to get the hair off the legs without using them, and that's pretty important.
All right, we got some more questions. So we're going to backtrack here. One came in, this one. Would you clip a red Holstein calf tighter like a colored breed, or do you clip them like a black and white?
I would clip them like a black and white. I would clip the red Holstein calf a little thicker too.
And would you use 50s for a jersey? Typically, okay, sorry, this is from Clarissa. Would you use 50s for a jersey? I typically only use them on white tails.
I would use 50s on a jersey as far as their tail, or if it's cow or udder and her tail. I've seen people clip jerseys with 50s all over. For me, they kind of look like a basketball with a bunch of grease on them in the ring. I wouldn't maybe go that tight with a 50, but if you have a set of Arcos or Crematos, the tightest setting on them, like especially milk cows, heifers, maybe you don't need to go quite that aggressive. Looks really nice. Jerseys, for the most part, you can take them about as tight as you want to or have time to, but at the same time, the tighter you go, the harder it is to clip, because it's a lot of little tiny spots and little tiny pieces of hair. And especially jerseys or some of these, a jersey that's in nice shape, so skinny, every little patch shows up, when you miss it. And so I would say I would always start off, if I were at World Day Expo or the Royal and you have some really good jerseys, I would start off clipping them a little bit thicker, like a Holstein cow blade, and then maybe run back over them with the Arcos. I think that helps a lot. It makes your job a lot easier. But that's just my personal opinion.
All right, back to the equipment. What specific oil do you use when you're to lubricate your clippers? Is there one that you prefer, and is there anything that we should stay away from?
I prefer 3-in-1 oil, is usually what I use. But just when I'm clipping here at the farm, I just take whatever I can find. Take a little bit out of the 55-gallon drum of Hitran or something and pour it on there. I would say that, and maybe some guys that would disagree with me on this, but I think for sure any oil is better than no oil. So whatever you can get your hands on. If you're going to the show, when I was clipping all the time, I always had a bottle of 3-in-1 oil in my bag. But any oil is better than no oil. Some guys would say don't use WD-40. Hey, if that's all you got, that's all you got. So use it. I've helped Joel Phoenix at the show. I don't know if worked with him very much, but he doesn't usually have very much. So I end up using Final Bloom for a week at the show for oil. So pretty expensive oil on his part, but that's how it goes.
All right, good stuff. That was good. When you're done clipping for the day, you see everything at the shows. You see some guys just chuck them in their suitcase and they roll out the door. You see others take a lot of time to wrap them up and clean them. What's the best way if you're going to invest in some clipping equipment, how should it be stored when you're not using it?
Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I was maybe one of the guys that just kind of threw it in there and drug it out of the barn in my bag. But I think for sure taking care of it's very important. Always, I would say, especially at a show when a big blower is available, when you're done, blow out the clippers, get all the hair out of them. The hair is really what gets in there and makes them get hot. So I'm sure I've all used clippers that the blades are getting really hot. So lack of oil, but also when the body gets hot, it's usually filled up with hair in there, not letting the vents let the air out, let it cool down the motor. So I think always blowing them up, wrapping them up, putting them away nice, just like anything, whether it's your hose you rinse the heifer with or your halters, like putting everything away nice and neat is pretty important. It helps everything last a lot longer.
All right. Does anybody else have any more questions, or should I just keep on going down the list here? All right, we'll get into paints. This is a big one. Everybody wants to know what your preference is for, especially, I'm even curious to know this, what your preference is for brown for jerseys. And the different, actually, you know what? We're going to back up. Another question about equipment just came in here. So we're going to hold off on the paint. And I've got from Stella, do you send your clippers away for maintenance or do you do your own?
And I don't do a lot of clipping anymore, but when I would do about, I don't really want to give percentage. I do quite a bit myself, your blocks, your springs, kind of easy things. But when I got into, every year I'd send them away. I tried to, at least, they're every 2, send them away, because it's usually they need new bearings and have a bearing puller, or when something serious would happen, like I could put a new cord on, I could, change my block, I could change my springs, I could change stuff like that. But sometimes you get into some serious stuff when they won't run and it's not an electrical issue, it's the armature or something like that, which I didn't have any business messing around with them. I always sent them to a guy in Wisconsin. He treated me fair, and I don't know how that would work for you guys in Ontario, but if you have someone you trust that could work on them and it's not too expensive, then I think it's pretty easy to learn how to do some of the simple stuff. And it's nice to be able to fix them on the fly. I always have a few spare parts in my bag, but stuff like that. But once every 2 years, I try to send them out just to kind of have them go through it and replace any parts that were beyond my expertise.
All right, we had another question just come in. from Cilicia, how often should you be clipping your calf? So I guess that's kind of in between shows. If you don't have a lot of shows back to back and your calf's at home, how often should you be clipping them?
Yeah, I meant to hit on this before. I'm sorry, I forgot about it. I would say, depending on how fast her hair grows, but I would say, especially for a 4-H calf, a project calf, if you're clipping them once every month, once every 2 months, I think that's once every month. I think is probably plenty. But good, you know, and it gets her more used to clipping. That was another thing you guys talked about in your answer, was getting your calves used to being clipped, and it's very, very important. I don't think you need to try and clip her every week, but every month I think it is plenty. Is a good time to do it, and even it's great for promoting the hair to grow the right way, and getting the hair to pop and all that kind of stuff. But as much for that is just you can see the calf better, right? So they start to get that little bit of hair on top of them, and you're not really sure, are they a little heavy, what's going on? And then you clip them and you're like, oh no, actually she looks really good, I'm really happy with weight she's at. Or you clip them up and say, oh boy, she is a little chubby, maybe I need to cut her back. So I think keeping them clipped off, like I would say every month, if you're not a 4-H, you know, if it's not your project calf, if it's every 2 months, depending on time between shows or whatever, is probably okay too. But keeping them clipped and just so you can see how the calf is coming along, how she looks, because it's pretty easy to, especially again the summertime, and oh boy, it's hot and she's dragging her loin and she looks heavy, and then you clip her and you're like, oh wow, no, she's really nice, I'm really happy with her. You know, it's hard to, it's nice to be able to see them kind of what they look like at the show to judge where you're going.
That is actually really good advice. I'm learning stuff tonight here too. We had another question come in from Sarah. How often should we be getting our blades sharpened?
Whenever they're dull. So I had a wheel myself I would bring, but it all depends. This is where clipping clean calves and having your equipment properly maintained. If you're clipping your clean calf that's already doesn't have long, the first clipping, you know, after wintertime or in the wintertime when it's long, gross, kind of straggly, especially if they're young calfy hair, blades don't do well in that. They die really fast. But you know, you get into this time of year, if they've already been clipped once or twice, that really your blade should last a long time if they're clean heifers. But I would say sharpen your blades whenever they get dull, but it's tough especially if you only have one set of clippers, is where it gets tough. If you have to switch your blades out, I would always sharpen my blades before I put them back in. Sometimes if I didn't have that option, sometimes they'd work before you switched them back in, but they didn't always, and it's really aggravating when you have blade trouble. So I would say before you go to the show, if you have a wheel that's convenient for you, or someone can sharpen them that's convenient for you, I'd like to go to the show with, make sure your blades are sharp, because that gets really frustrating to be at the show and not having anything cut. I've been there numerous times, and it's not fun.
We had a couple questions come in there, but I think, Pat, you answered them right as the questions came in, and the kids asked, for beginners, when can you tell that your blades are dull? But I think you just answered that. When they don't work, you know that they're dull. Did you want to elaborate on that, or did you cover it?
Yeah, pretty well. But it's not always 100% your blades is the problem, though. So if you have someone you trust to sharpen your blades, or you're sharpening your blades and you sharpen them and they're still not cutting, it's probably not your blades. That's where it gets into maybe some clipper maintenance, which I won't get too much detail because I can't really show you. But the main thing to go, I would say, and especially in Andy's clippers, is your springs. And once you lose tension in your springs, once they get loose, it's really hard to get stuff to cut. So, and I've been in that boat too, where you try clipping and you sharpen your blades and nothing. So I think it's pretty important that if your blades are sharp, if you know they're sharp and they're still not cutting, and you put oil on them, and a good trick, I'm sure you guys have seen it, and I'm not saying it's the most sanitary, but to spit on them, it's pretty good lube for them just for a second to try and get them going, or starting with just one side of the blade, just trying to get them back to life a little bit, and then they get going. But if you can't get anything to cut and you know you have sharp blades, I'd probably look into your clippers being the problem, not your blades.
There we go. See, I'm learning lots tonight. All right. Unless the kids have any more questions come in about the equipment, we're going to switch to the hot topic of sprays and things. So they're dying to know, what do you prefer to use? for color for jerseys. I mean, obviously, what's your go-to? Black? That's a big thing we have up here. Trying to find a black that works, that doesn't cover the kids' whites. And then also, I know you don't have this problem, but we have to, if we want to get the good clear magic up here, we've got to source it strategically, I'll say. Yeah, whatever you've got to tell us about sprays, what you use, how you use. Another big issue a lot of kids struggle with is getting their clear to set properly. I know it's not as easy when you can't demonstrate it, but if you can kind of give us some tips on how you apply your clear and things like that.
So for paint for jerseys, there's a couple different things that work really well. And this is where it comes back to depending on the color of them. Summertime, usually they're not near as dark as they get by royal time, right? But by royal time, and I'm not a real jersey guy. I don't usually work for just jersey string, stuff like that. But I usually just go with Black Magic because it's available. Black Magic or Black Finisher, just barely miss the top line. And sometimes you end up painting the whole heifer. I wouldn't say go ahead and try and do that at your next 4-H show, but if you kind of stand back and just kind of miss the top line, you can get the clear magic look out of it. But there's a product called Mighty Mac. I don't know if that's available up there for lighter jerseys. It works really well. And then a lot of guys use different color spray paints. I've worked with a couple that are more jersey guys that they always said, I couldn't even tell you the brand of it, but it's called camouflage paint. They buy it at Walmart, and I've used it before. It's a really dark brown, and it works a lot better than Black Magic. It sprays nicer. You don't have to worry about it running or leaving spots and stuff like that. But camouflage was the name of it, and it worked really, really well. Wood finish, when I was first starting out, a lot of guys were using that, especially on some of the lighter colored ones. But myself, I usually just use Black Magic or black paint. But like I said, I wouldn't recommend first time at the show just going to town with black paint because it can get a little messy. But like I said, I'm not a real jersey guy, so I have a hard time giving you a perfect answer on that. There'd be other guys that probably be a little better answering than I would. When it comes to other sorts of sprays, I prefer Black Magic over Black Finisher. I don't know if that's available in Canada like Clear is, but I feel like Black Magic, it will drip sometimes, which can be a problem, but it doesn't get all on their tail. The Black Finisher, the yellow cans, I'm sure you guys know about them. You know, that you put in your black heifer's top line and they swing it around, and then their tail's all black unless you dry it for a certain amount of time, and it gets to be a real pain. The only time I really prefer using Black Finisher is if, which I don't know how legal it is for 4-H even, but when you're painting white spots, it works the best for that. Putting something else down as a base first, like a red paint or something, just to get the white off, and then painting over with Black Finisher. When it comes to Clear Magic, I guess the number one key is to keep it cold, which I think most of the more advanced kids would know. Keep it in a cooler, keep it on ice. It sprays so much nicer. It lasts so much longer. And when I do it, so I have my top line blown up nice, how I want it. And I like to spray it and kind of come through with the blower right behind it to dry it and kind of set it where I want. I kind of blow the hair in a little bit too to bring it in together, but not always. And I don't know if that's super, super important right now, but I would say when you're putting the cold Clear Magic on, coming through with your blower behind it to make it, to dry it and set it how you want it is pretty important. But the biggest thing is cold Clear Magic over warm Clear Magic. Makes a huge difference.
Awesome. All right, we had a question come in. If you have black paint that doesn't set dry well, are there any tricks you have that might help the paint to dry so you don't have to worry about it smudging?
Yeah, I always use my blower, my top line blower. I usually just put it on a cold setting because I don't want to really burn the heifer or anything. And I just kind of keep putting the back of my hand on wherever the black paint is, just to make sure, and then check your hand to see if it's coming. It will dry. It's just sometimes kind of a pain. And so when it comes back to if you're painting a white spot on a black and white heifer, stay away from that area with the shine. So if there's a piece on a rump that you painted black, that's where the shine eats the paint off, right? So that's what'll make that start to drip. And it's the same thing with the jerseys, that when you paint their whole body black and then you shine them all right up, and then you touch them and it's just black everywhere. It's the shine that makes it all run, right? So if there's just one little spot on a rump or something that you wanted to paint with the yellow black can, then try not to put any shine on that part, dry it, and hopefully it shouldn't get on a tail. But I've done it for quite a while, and I would still get it whenever I get on their tail too. It's a tough thing.
All right, and actually, you just started into my next question. What do you use for shine? What is your you see a lot of different guys. Some of them just spray it. You see some of them spraying it on the ribs. You see some with their own concoctions in the spray bottle. Some of them are using sponges. Some of them are wiping. Some of them are brushing. Some of them aren't. What's your
I would say this is kind of the same thing we talked about before, where everyone has their own different idea, what works best, what looks best. When I was clipping for other people, I just kind of used whatever was readily available. And to be 100% honest, I'm not sure it really makes a difference. Whether you're talking Final Bloom, Final Mist, there's a spray we have down here. I don't know if you guys would have it, but called Peppy. I really like the Peppy, but maybe I just like the smell of it, I guess, because I really don't think if you put enough of it on, it doesn't make a tremendous difference in the different products. I like the sprays that spray hard and fast. I don't like it when, you kind of have to just let it dribble out, because I'm usually kind of in a hurry. But whether you're using purple oil or whatever you want to use, if you put adequate amount on, I think when they get in the ring, it doesn't really make a tremendous difference. When you're doing the ribs or anything like that, me personally, I always would spray it and brush it. I'd put a little bit extra on the ribs, but the same thing. I don't know if that's really making a huge difference when you're in the ring or not, but it makes you feel better and think you did a little extra, I think. But.
All right, we're getting to the end of what I had here, and then we'll see if anybody else has any questions. Tail. Oh, here we got another one from Stella on shine, and then we'll go to tail fluffing. For beginners, when should we apply the shine?
I think for me, the shine is the last step. So I should have got back into this a little more too. So I guess when I would be prepping for the ring and taking my calf, her top line's already done that morning. She's been getting filled, all that kind of thing. When I'm bringing her out 20 minutes before she's supposed to be going into the ring, or however long you want to give yourself, first thing I do is I blow them off with a big blower if you have one. If not, use your little blower, whatever. Just get all the dust and the straw and everything off them. Then I like to blow up their belly hair. So I'm sure most of you guys have all seen people blow up the belly hair. You kind of use your blower just like you do on the top line, and you come underneath and you're trying to blow it up to make them look deeper and a little more springer rib when you get behind. And you take your clippers and you trim that to where you think it looks the best, where it's even, it blends. It can be a little tricky, especially when you're getting started. It can be really tricky, but when done properly, it looks really nice. After that, I usually never would do the ribs until we were prepping. Some people like to do them earlier. Some people like to do them earlier in the week so they look nicer in the stall. Myself, I'd always wait until kind of last minute till the final prep, and I do the ribs next. I feel it's easier to do the ribs then because they're already filled. So a heifer, if you do it the first day or even that morning before they get filled, as their belly gets bigger and wider, the skin on their ribs move. So I've seen it numerous times where someone will do it in the morning and then a heifer takes a big drink or takes a big fill, and then the ribs aren't even matched up with where the clipping was, So I like to wait until right before the ring to do the ribs. So after the belly hair and the ribs are done, if you want to blow them back off again, if they're very dirty and stuff like that, you can. If not, I'd always like to use static guard, or even rubbing alcohol, something to get the clear magic that's on the body from doing the top line, get all that off. And then after you kind of got that, so they got a nice, like, kind of natural shine to them, clean, kind of a clean look, I'd usually always use Revive their whole bodies. I think Revive works best, in my opinion, for skinning bags and kind of right then to just get a little more pop to their hair coat, and then after I brush that off, I would use Shine, load up their bodies with Shine, then paint their legs. Whether it's a jersey, you're painting their hooves, or a Holstein, and you're painting their legs white. And then always kind of seem to be, and usually because it's the easiest thing to do when you're running behind them to the ring, was fluff their tail. It was the last thing you do.
Right. We have a question that came in from Taylor. What is the best product for removing paint if you overspray a little?
It gets tricky. It gets really, really tricky. The problem with it, and I would say depending on how bad you oversprayed a little bit, I think maybe you're better off just leaving a little overspray sometimes than trying to rub it. Because I've been in this situation numerous times where, you got a black spot on a white heifer and you overspray on the other side and there's black over there and you go, oh crap. So you take some static guard or rubbing alcohol or whatever you take your top lines out with, and you spray it on there and you try to rub it and all it does is smudge and just leaves this black tint all over the white and you're going, oh boy. So depending on how bad you oversprayed, if it's just a few specks, I think it's probably best just to leave it there. If not, I think what I would say is whatever you have that you're going to take the top lines out with later, that is what you should put on there and try to rub it. But it can get a little tricky and it doesn't always come out nice. It doesn't usually go right back to normal.
All right, and on to tails. Is there a spray that you like to use in the tails? Do you like to see the really big puff balls? Do you like a more natural look? Is there, what's your opinion on tail fluffing?
Yeah, I like them puffy to a certain extent, I guess. I always use Clear Magic, whether you want to use a actual tail adhesive or stuff like that. When it comes, like I just use what's readily available, and the same thing with my own cattle. It's instead of buying extra stuff, just use Clear Magic. I think it's kind of a mix between natural and a big and puffy. Big, but as natural looking as you can is what I would say. So I'd always start brushing it out normal, like you would to make it all straight, and then I would take a piece kind of in the middle and just kind of work around it to fluff it back out. And while I'm holding that piece, I'd spray with Clear Magic to try to keep it where it is, so I'm not swinging in. It doesn't, within half an hour, if you don't, it's usually right back to how it looked before. But if you put some sort of adhesive in it, like it helps it stay out big.
And we have a question from Shayna. She's asking, what do you think of fake tails?
I think fake tails are like a lot of things. If they're done right, they can look incredible. Like some people are really, really good at them. I'm not one of those people. I am really bad at fake tails. But there are some people that make them, you wouldn't even be able to tell if it was fake or natural, like no idea. But on the other hand, when I put one in, it doesn't look good at all. It looks really fake. I think an average looking fake tail is better than not having any switch at all. And when they have, whether it's a commercial dairy that cuts the switches right off, or it got stepped on as a calf and never grew out, whatever it is, I think even a fake looking tail from 50 feet away is better than no tail at all. But it's really tricky. We're lucky in New York to have a person named Joyce Thomas who is absolutely incredible with it. They call her the tail lady. If you guys have been to the Royal, I'm sure you've been around there. She's put tails on pretty much every famous cow in North America, I think. But just absolutely incredible. Myself, I don't have her skills. I put them on at some shows, and I do think it helps give them a little more ring presence, a little more balance from across the ring. But when you get right on it, it's just a bad fake tail job. That's what it looks like.
All right, and from Addison and Tess, we have fake tails on heifers. Can they be too long for their age? Is there an appropriate length?
Yeah, but it's hard to judge too. I would say on your fall calf, you do not want to have a switch that's down past their hocks. You know what I mean? And from a judge's standpoint, I don't think they're maybe going to super knock you for that, but you want it to look natural. When people see big long tails on these calves and stuff, the number one thing they think of is, wow, she must be old, and right or wrong, the calves have different tails, but so I'm not saying if you feel like your tail is too long, you should cut the bottom of it either. I don't know if that's the right answer, but you don't want to have a switch that looks like it belongs on a cow on a calf either, right? So it's somewhere in between.
Perfect. All right. Do we have any more questions for Pat? Or Pat, if you have any final remarks that you wanted to pass on before I turn it over to Mackenzie?
Not too much, I guess. I guess, like I said before, if it's something you're interested in clipping for a project or for a career, It's a lot of fun. You get to see a lot of places, a lot of cool cows, meet a lot of great people. Most of my best friends I met through cow shows, and I'm probably pretty sure most of you guys are in the same boat at this age. That's where it all starts. I think it's great that you guys are all doing this in particular, but showing and keen about your 4-H projects. But like I said before, no one's good when they start. If you want to say I'm good at it now, that's fine, but I wasn't good at it when I started at all. The only reason I started with it, because I like going to shows, and I said, geez, this is a way I can keep going to shows and make money to do it. Perfect. Yeah, I'll figure out how to clip. When I was most of your age, I went to the cow shows to play cards with my buddies and drink soda. You know, I mean, that's what showing was about, right? But it is a fun thing, but it just takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time. And the best thing, I was very fortunate. I met a lot of people that helped me out, gave me a lot of opportunities. But I feel like everyone's in the same boat. Don't be scared to go ask people for help if you're at the show. Everyone's nice enough to take 5 minutes out of their day to come look at your calf, see what you think, give you some tips, give you some pointers. They all started where you did. Don't be afraid to go ask. And don't be afraid to go help somebody. If this is something you seriously want to do or want to get better with. I mean, don't tell the guys that I used to help maybe, but the first few years I went to Madison or the Royal, I would have done it for free. I just wanted to go, like that's how you got to be keen about it. You got to want to do it and just go work and watch and listen. Watching and listening is very, very important. I feel like, and maybe it's a little underappreciated. Just watch, work hard and watch and listen. And then when you're doing it yourself or helping, maybe ask some questions. How should we be doing this? What can I do better here? And you'll get better in a hurry. So those are the biggest things, I guess.
All right. Well, I can say from experience and watching Pat work that he's pretty humble because he's one of the best that I've seen. And I'm actually kind of honored that he's clipped some belly animals. So we've got 2 more questions for you here, Pat, that came in, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mackenzie. So our last 2 questions from Addison. One is, what is the best thing to take all the spray out of tops after a show?
So there's a couple different things. Basically anything oil-based will help take the tops out. So I've seen people use everything from static guard to mayonnaise. I've seen people use mayonnaise to take the tops out, and it actually works pretty well. There's a couple different sprays. There's a spray called Easy All, where you spray it in and let it sit for, I think it's 20 minutes or something. For me, I think that works really, really good. But the best thing to take it out is just elbow grease. It's just scrubbing, putting a product in, and then just making sure you get it all out. It's pretty important to get it all out, especially how your guys' shows go, or if you're lucky enough to be at the Royal, and then so you're going to show on 4-H day and then show again on Friday or Saturday, whatever day it is. You need to make sure you get all that clear magic and stuff out, because it can be a real pain to blow them up. It won't look near as nice the next time if their tops aren't clean. But so some sort of product, whatever you like that works best. Rubbing alcohol works. All these things will help take the adhesive and the oil off and the paint and stuff like that. But just make sure you scrub them and scrub them and scrub them and scrub them. And then when you're done, make sure you feel all down through them, and then probably end up scrubbing them some more.
All right. And our last question of the night from Elizabeth. If your calf has a really small tail and it won't stay fluted, it won't stay up, what do you do to keep them up? And I know Elizabeth is a Jersey girl, and I know from experience some of these little Jersey tails are really hard to get them to get that volume. What do you do to try and keep them up for as best you can?
So those ones like that I usually try to fluff them even more than I would to begin with. And not saying this is foolproof by any means, but I like to fluff them even bigger than I would normally, like almost like too much, and spray as much as I can in and try to let them sit like that. Especially in the summertime, it's hard because when it's humid out or something like that, like it's hard to keep the nice tail fluff for a long time. When it's cooler, when you get to the fall shows, they'll stay puffed out and look great for a long time. But when it's hot and humid and they're swinging their tails, and I didn't talk about fly spray before either, but that's also a very, very important step before you go into the ring, especially in the summertime, because it can bother them like crazy. But you know, in the summertime when it's hot and humid, it's really hard. Whether it's I feel jerseys are harder anyways, to be honest, to fluff their tails. That their hair is maybe coarser, but it doesn't fluff as nice. But the summertime, whether it's a calf or a cow, to keep in the big volume to them is pretty tough. So I like to fluff them really, really, really a lot, and then spray the crap out of them, and hopefully it stays before they get done with their class.
Awesome. All right. Well, I haven't had any more questions come in, so we're going to turn it over to Mackenzie.
Great. Nice and loud. Yep. Talk. Go.
On behalf of the
Poster.
on behalf of the Frontenac Leeds, Dundas, Peterborough, Carleton, Online 4-H Dairy Clubs. Thank you, Mr. Lundy, for taking time to speak with us and sharing your clipping knowledge. Thank you.
No problem. It was my pleasure. I appreciate it a lot, guys. Hopefully next time maybe we can do an actual demonstration in person or something. It's a lot easier to talk about than over Zoom. It's I've never even been on Zoom in my life, so it's a whole new world for me. But thank you guys for having me. And like I said before, if you're interested in doing stuff like this, don't be afraid to ask somebody. Go talk to people you look up to, the guys that you admire that are doing it. They'll all give you the time of day. They'll all give you pointers. Don't be afraid. Go try and help some of these guys at some of the better shows, even if it's just show day or something, just to see and get a feel for how they do things. You learn so much by just watching and being involved with that.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. If you want to go, we're just going to do a little bit of finish up here, talk about our next meeting. We can let you go. We've taken up a lot of your time. We really appreciate this. I know I learned some stuff. I know the kids did. Thank you very, very, very much.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.